Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Anika Apple Podcast. This is our divine guidance episode for the month of September 2025. I'm Anika Apple, trusted advisor and divine strategist, called to prepare leaders for a higher purpose. And here, leadership is sacred, community is essential, and healing is a collective act of faith. I'm so glad that you are joining me today to go through this month's divine guidance episode because there is a lot for us to talk about. So we are going to go into a few key themes for this episode. And as I like to always start out, it is important whenever you are receiving anything that is prophetically shared to remember that you should always be aligning with the divine God, however you call the divine source, higher self, whatever you might refer to it as. But it is important for you to go back and take the information that you've heard, to connect with it, ask, what is here for me? What things do I need to know or understand? And also to ground yourself in whether or not this truth is applicable to you. So how do I apply this? What are the things that I am to garner from this? And then I would always encourage you to seek additional understanding because that's really, really important. So we're going to go through a couple of highlights, and I will tell you that today's episode is really about preparation for the end of this year and for the beginning of next year. Now, there are lots of things that, we have already foreshadowed. Typically, from a prophetic standpoint, I usually see things about a year and a half to, 3 years down the road. So I definitely have typically a longer vantage point. However, I would say I have noticed, and I don't know what your express experience has been, but there's been a lot happening in rapid succession. It's almost like I'm having a conversation with God and I'm seeing it just happen right before me. It's happening very quickly. And what God called me to today is to share some things very specifically around the way that we prepare for the end of this year and the beginning of next year. And what I would share with you is I think that the message for this episode is mean what you pray. And so we're also going to talk a little bit about the importance of the power of prayer and then having clear intentions behind what you say. And the leading that I'm getting right now in this moment is to start there, to start with clear intentions. So it's interesting. I guess maybe about a week or so ago, I was reading and God was taking me through the moment where Mary is putting oil on Jesus's feet. And in this instance, we're seeing Judas there, and Judas is like, hey, like, why are you wasting that oil? And, his call out is couched like, that oil could be used for good. We could be selling that and making money to give to the poor. But then if you read it from the book of John, it talks about how he was a thief and his intentions were to be able to take the money. So they would have, earned some money and he would have pocketed some of them. So, what's interesting about this is if you think about when things like this happen around us all the time, it's when someone can tell us something that seems very sensible. It's easy for us to make like a connection in our mind with like, oh yeah, we do need to raise money for the poor. We don't want people to be poor, and that is expensive. So why are you using all of it in this way, right? It's easy for us to connect to that and not check for the intention. And the intention in this case would be Judas making the decision that if he had it, because he was the keeper of the money, right? Like if they sold all of that oil, that he would have the opportunity to therefore pocket some of that money. So he had a selfish desire and he was couching it in something that looked selfless, as if he was being more considerate, of the conditions of the poor and this high value of oil. He also clearly didn't understand what Mary did, which was this moment was so incredibly precious with Jesus, right? And I want us to really like take this. I love the beauty of being able to be in the text and bring it to life in real world. First and foremost, for many months now, we've been talking about how there are leaders who, some people are clear that their intent is to deceive. And some people think they're doing the right thing and they're repeating the thing over and over again that they have heard, what they were taught. Interestingly, earlier I was also in the book of John, and I was reading where Jesus was saying, you call yourself the sons of Abraham, but like basically differentiating, like, but Abraham actually was, in alignment with God. Like Abraham knew God. Abraham was constantly connecting with God, understood. And so you follow along what man gives you, but you're not developing that relationship with God directly. And again, it's like we can take the things that we have heard, that we have been taught, and just repeat them over and over again without ever questioning whether or not they make sense. And I will tell you right now, for many of you in leadership, especially if you were like in my age range, if you're like that kind of Gen Z, if you were a baby boomer, like you're finding that a lot of friction with the generations entering the workforce because they don't just sign up to say yes, because they actually want to do things better. They want to make it make sense. They want to understand the why behind things. And what's really interesting is that what I see and is being confirmed in this moment is that a lot of our generation released our curiosity really early. And it's like we released the curiosity to create relationship with one another, to create community, and to stay safe. And whatever we felt were the impending, threats to our ability to be successful, and wherever those wounds came from, it stood in the way of us having the psychological safety to ask the questions. And what's interesting is the generations that are coming up now, there's so much on the inside of them, pushing them to challenge the status quo, to ask the questions, because their connectivity to their purpose is so on fire. This likely could have been the case for other generations if we were younger in the moment where all of the things in the world are happening. But for many of us in that generation, whatever was happening surrounding us as we were growing up was calling us to seek safety. And God has been stirring up the divine gifting in the children, in particular, teens as well, but really in the children, like really focusing. If you pay attention to what you can hear them saying and repeating, to the questions that they're asking, to the certainty that they have, especially those who really are vocal about their relationship with God, with the divine, with something bigger than all of what we know in our humanness. So there's something really big to tuning in and paying attention to them and recognizing that while they are in the midst of challenging the status quo, it may feel uncomfortable, but it actually is for a purpose. And so they would not find themselves in the side of the conversation with Jesus where he's like, you don't know God. Because they're actually like, I'm seeking understanding. I want to understand. And I don't want to just repeat doing things just for the sake of. So we have the leaders, right, who are not intending to do something wrong, but they are following the pattern. They're following the path. They're like the paper cutout. This is the way it's always been. And then you have some who are out there who really are intending to harm, like Judas's behavior, where he's like, he says what's reasonable so people will agree, but then he wants to actually steal the money. And God has been calling attention to us to say, you must discern who you are following. It is time for you to pay attention to this. It's also important for you to recognize who you are being in the midst of it. How are you showing up? How are you leading in your company? What's really driving your intention? So as I was sitting with God in this particular scripture, going back to Judas and when he's looking at Mary putting the oils on Jesus's feet, God said to me, so let me show you some relationships, some connections, and I want you to pause and check your intentions. Now, this was interesting because where God took me was not about not having good intentions, but it was about doubling down, like looking at what's the next level of intention beyond where you are right now. So, for example, if you're going to go provide just some help, so like from a place of generosity to someone, underneath it, is it because there's a pure generosity of spirit, or is there something actually that you want in return? A lot of times we're not aware of that, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to help this person. I'm going to contribute in all of these ways. And I'm hoping that there's something that comes out of it, right? I was having a conversation with a really close friend of mine a few days ago. And for a really, really long time, they are one of the most generous people I've ever come across in my lifetime. I mean, like, really would give you the shirt off their back, drive for, hours to pick you up, like that kind of like good person. And as we were having the conversation, they were just talking about some situations where they felt really hurt and disappointed by people in their lives, which sensibly so, because she is the go-to person, right? Where so many people have always depended on her. And I said to her, as I'm listening and I'm reflecting, because I can I can identify with some of it, because it's also a lot of what my experience has been too. But I was like, if you pause for a second, just ask yourself, like, what is the true intention that you had underneath it? Was there an intention that, like, I'm doing all these things and hopefully I'll be seen, or someone will show up for me in this way, or someone will do something for me? And that's the dynamic that is important for us to recognize in this moment. Sometimes we think, well, my intentions are pure and that's enough. But actually what God was calling me to is, what's the truth of the intention? Even if it's pure, it's fine, but is it a stated intention? So what we are called to recognize is that when we're moving in collaboration with people, our work can be to say, like, here we are, we have some intention around, collaborating together, and here's what I hope to get out of it. There is no room, I hear you, no room for us to be creating relationship, creating connection, commitment, building, businesses and organizations, communities, all of these things, without saying explicitly what we want, what we desire to come out of it. We have created so many problems for ourselves. I see this a lot in love relationships, or maybe that's just maybe that's not you, but like where things get misconstrued because people just simply are not clear about exactly what they want. They're not comfortable to say, what I really desire from this is that it looks like XYZ, that it looks like this kind of relationship. And what God is saying is that in this season for us, it is time for us to get comfortable saying, yes, I'm going to do this, and here is what I want to come out of it. Or I am giving from this place because I have the ability to give, and here are my intentions. So it's really important for us to recognize that the intentions matter. And here is how it ties into the next theme, which is mean what you pray. So what God is saying to us is that it's important for us to recognize that the words that we say, the prayers, are declarations, that we are asking for clarity, we are declaring things, we are asking for certain, things to come that are going to create ease or opportunity, or, perhaps building something new. And God is saying, but they ask for these things, but they don't have any idea of what they must trade for it. Meaning, what might you have to surrender? What might you have to give up? We ask for these things, and in so many cases, we're not willing to do the work for the preparation. And, I want you to understand, I'm using the trade and the work as really light words, because what trading might be is I have to decide that I'm going to let go of this scarcity mentality that I've held onto. If I want to win the $1 billion lottery, I've got to let go of that and recondition myself to know that it's safe for me to be abundant, to receive that which God has pulled out for me. right? I might have to open myself up to a new model of how I work, or invite other people into the structure that I have that may not feel natural to me, but it's the opportunity for me to be able to grow, right? We desire expansion and whatever those other things are that are of value to you. And in order to have that, you have to create the space for it to be so. So God is saying, like, when you're praying for whatever it is that you are desiring to have in this life, even if it is peace, mean it. So you're like, okay, what do you mean? Like, it's peace. Of course, we want peace. But do you really? Because if what you do after you walk away from the prayer is get wrapped up in the gossip and the shenanigans of what's going on in the world, then are you really seeking peace? Are you really desiring peace if what you rally around is the destruction? Are you really seeking peace if what you are engulfed in is the messiness, or even watching other people be messy with each other, right? Is that really peace? Because even if you're not partaking in it, your observation of it is still keeping you in a cycle of things that are not grounded in peace. Mean what you pray. And what God was preparing me with as I was getting ready to jump on to record this episode is that in many cases in this season, you are going to get exactly what you pray for. So for some, you should celebrate, because what you have been praying for and waiting on, it's ready for you if you are ready for it. In some cases, we may be praying for something that we haven't done the work to be prepared for. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather spend the upfront time preparing for something than I would to have it and let it slip through my hands. So if we haven't done the work, if we haven't said to God, how else do we need to prepare to hold this, to be the person who's responsible for this, to allow this thing to come through me in such a way that it's a blessing, not only for me and my family in the future, but also for other people. There's an opportunity for us to shift the way we prepare for that which God desires to give to us, which is what we asked for. So make sure that we are meaning what we pray, because we want to ensure that when it comes, we know we've asked for it and we're declaring our readiness. And if you're not there and there's a breakthrough that you're waiting for, focus on your preparation for the breakthrough. You can still ask for the thing. God, I desire to be, an author. I desire to be an author, and help me to know how. Show me what I need to move out of the way in order for me to be able to do that. Many of you know that I have a book that's coming out, and I'm excited to share the launch date with you next week. But we open up pre-sale on Tuesday, www.healingisrequired.com. And over the time, the process of building up to this book, God has taken me on a journey of vulnerability, sharing some things that I did not think that I was going to share in the book. The background for this book is the book is about healing, and I call it God's book because it's God. It literally was divinely downloaded through me. Even the stories that I have included in the book are things that God showed me. So I may share them in my words with my own emotion and experiences, but God was like, this is a good time to tell them this. What about this? Like, tell this story. And there were some times I was like, I'm not telling that story. And by the time we finished the manuscript, the story was in there, right? So part of what that journey was for me was to get comfortable with the vulnerability of allowing the story to be like this in print. And for people who know me personally, they're like, she will tell you whatever about her life because she's always been an open book. But that feels very different when you're an author. And when your books are going out to people all over the world without the context and the background, they won't all have the benefit of me saying, hi, I'm Anika, I'm a prophet, and this is how God speaks to me, and having these experiences where God is speaking through me to you. And then you're like, oh, I get it. Like, this really is somebody who God has called. Like, someone will read the book and be like, what is this? Right. And so we often get so attached to the thing that we're praying for that we are not asking God specifically enough to make us good stewards of it, to make our container wide enough for it, to show us what we must release, what we have to let go of so that we can allow that thing to come in. For me, writing, becoming an author meant that some other things needed to move, that there was time that had to be spent differently. The way that I protected myself around away from reading other works, listening to other prophetic words, and all of that stuff over the last couple of years was part of the assignment. And so be careful about what it is that you are asking for. Don't ask haphazardly. And don't ask without an expectation to have the thing. So if you are praying for something, first check your heart to say, is this really what I want? The power of our words is amplified. I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast that I have been seeing things move really rapidly. Like I can say something in prayer to God and like the answer comes, like a phone call comes and like I'm blown away by the way this thing has been happening. And in that kind of rapid succession, imagine us holding a thought about something we actually really don't want for longer than we need to, and then that thing actually happening. There's also intentionality in our ability to pray together in concert for the things that are in the best interest of the world. And right now, we should be very clearly praying for people to heal. We should be praying for people to see themselves and understand the impact of the decisions and choices that they make, that they are not whole unto themselves, but that they impact others. That there is so much more for people to be able to invest in the well-being of others in their same country, in their same state, in their same continent, and around the world. There's a lot of opportunity right now for us to care for each other in a way that is different than we ever have, and we need it. That version of being in alignment with God's true purpose for us is required. It is bringing us back to the truth of how we were created and why we exist in community with one another. There's a very beautiful intentional design that God has. And our prayers around that will help to shift the environment that we live in. So it is for us to also think beyond what's happening in our immediate, our homes, our family, our personal lives. It is important for us to be praying in concert with one another. God has been showing me a lot of moments where people are coming together and they are having revival, or they're experiencing, I experienced it earlier this year and I've shared that on another episode, but moments where people are pulling people together and healing is happening, where people are being pulled together and they are being in fellowship with one another and they are just worshiping God and they don't know each other. Like, it's all of these moments where people are coming together and they are reminded through spirit that they are connected. And there's so much more of that to come. And again, we want to welcome that and encourage us to be in community with one another. The next theme for us is God is just saying, I want you to know that when you pray with intention, you manage your words in accordance with the capacity in your heart. If your heart cannot hold for it, then you're not ready to pray for it. Pray for the capacity in your heart to change. That's how you move forward in alignment, recognizing the power of your prayer. Many of you pray and you do not really desire the words that are coming out of your mouth because you don't want to deal with the hardship of what it feels like to release the things that are required. But you cannot keep putting things in the same basket, especially when there's fruit rotting at the bottom. You need to clear out the container so what's new is not tainted by what was old. And in so many cases, you want to hold on to what already was as you ask for what you desire. I have the capacity to do either. But for sure, you will not be satisfied if I allow you to have the beautiful blessing that I'm holding for you, and we place it on top of what you know already desires to be discarded. The last part for today is the year-end push and prep for next year. So what are the things that you need to be focused on through the end of the year? We've talked about a couple, the intentions, to be really clear about what we mean when we pray, to understand the power of prayer, like have an expectation that things are going to come. The other things are that when you think about your frame up for the end of this year, your focus needs to be on tying up loose ends. Go back, thank you, God, to the things that you have opened that you have not completed, and identify how you bring them to finality. There should not be a lot of things holding on into next year. The other thing that God was showing me is, like, in businesses, we have like year-end processes, right? So it's like we go through reviews and we look at budgets and all of those things. What are your measurements for next year? How are you measuring your performance for this year? What are the things that you know that you need to be in a good position with in order to start off next year like ready to go? God is going to call many of us to rest at the end of this year, many of us. And what I'm seeing right now is I see people, a heavy amount of people taking rest in October into November, a lot of people resting in November. And then December, we know, is typical time. But God is saying, I'm calling them to rest, which means this may not be something that you have planned or something that is expected by you. And so as you're thinking, as you sit here in the beginning of September, it's an opportunity for you to take inventory of all that is happening in your life through the end of the year, and to begin to tie up those loose ends and to identify the things that are the priorities for you that need to be finished so that they are ready for next year. What would it look like if there was a shutdown in your business, in your home, in your community? Like, what would it look like if you could not easily get to the things that you would, that you normally would, to be able to finish the work that you start for that portion of, for the end of the year? So what would be the things that you need to navigate through? So I'm not declaring that there will be this, but you are to operate as if that's what you expect. So your preparation is closing out this year with processes, with the details, with the information that you need to have tucked away in such a way that when you are called away for rest, you can do it with clear conscience. The other thing is, when you're thinking about your planning for next year, expect accelerated timelines for things. Expect limited access for certain things that you often have wide available access to. God is not showing me clearly what that is, but one thing I am seeing is communication. Like, expect there to be lots of I'm seeing like big stones, like not quite boulders, but like big rocks in the middle of the road. And so it feels like you're like on an obstacle course, like you're constantly just swerving to navigate around them because there's so many and they're unexpected. And so God is saying, part of the preparation for next year is to have a streamlined process. How can you simplify things? How can you get rid of the things that you don't need? How can you bring yourself to a place of really clear, precise instruction for what it is that you desire to have for next year? How do you create that environment for yourself? For some of you with your businesses, there will be a time of great expansion. I've been talking about that for quite a bit. That next year will be it's going to provide a lot of opportunities that are just going to pop up. And the way that you prepare your readiness for that is going to enable you to take advantage of those opportunities. You don't want to miss those opportunities when they come up. You want to be able to say yes. You want to be able to expand. You want to be able to collaborate, because those things are going to bring so much more attention to the work that God is doing in and through you. And the other part of preparing for next year is a lot of shifting. And those shifts will look like businesses closing, industries changing. It will look like, wow, God is showing me so much automation that's like exploding. And I know, you might be like me. I'm like, well, we know this is kind of happening. And God's like, no. And what God is showing me is it's like, it's exploding. It's like, it's this, what I'm seeing is like just this automation, which looks like a lot of robots of different sizes and shapes and forms, but it's just like converging and going in, and it's just, they're like everywhere. So there's a lot of shift happening in that way. And what I am to tell you in this moment is that this is why it's important for you to be sitting with God. Earlier, I mentioned the example of Abraham, right? And how the men were like, we're the sons of Abraham or whatever. And it's like, yes, you are, but you're following just what he did. And, it is for us to understand that we are in a different time, that we are not in the times that have been in the past, that we cannot do exactly what other people did in the past because they weren't facing what we're facing today. And we're in a different time. It's time for us to honor and recognize it. And more than anything, the relationship that we need to be cultivating the most is our relationship with God. Next to that, it's our relationship with ourselves, knowing who you are and your values, what you stand for, and making sure that those things are so incredibly clear to the people around you, especially if you are in leadership or you run a business. You cannot go into next year without clarity about your values and without ensuring that those values are truly showing up in the way that you operate your business and you run your life. There shouldn't be differentiation. There shouldn't be this version of you that people at home are like, oh, they're this way, but people at work are like, oh, they're this way. It needs to be in true and genuine alignment. So your preparation for next year, it starts now. Your preparation for your year-end push, it starts now. Tie up the loose ends, spend some time envisioning what it is that you want to have in 2026. Ask God the important questions. What am I not seeing? How might I position myself better to receive that which you want to pour out to me as I move into next year? What are the things that I haven't identified for my 2026 plan that you are saying are important to you? What are the things that are up ahead around the corner that I may not be privy to or have not seen, but now I am ready to be able to receive? What are the things that you now want me to know because I've been making this progress, this growth, etc.? And my favorite is always going to be God, show me. So what do I not know about myself? Am I not recognizing about my business? I've been sitting with God to say, show me the holes in the boat. And God has been showing me the holes in the boat. It's not always a pleasant experience, right? But the reality is I would rather identify those things than have them taint an experience that a customer, a client, or a colleague has with how I run my business. And so we ask for these things in advance so that we can be prepared. And that's what God is delivering to us. So God, we thank you for today, for the divine insight and guidance to give us. So again, to recap, be clear about your intentions. And that's not just the way that you say things, but also what you mean. What is your desire underneath it? And begin to have the practice of saying those things out loud. So there is no question. There would have been no question, in the balance of the disciples, if Judas was like, yeah, and I'm planning to take the money, right? Like they wouldn't have co-signed with that. So, and think about it this way. If people are clear about what their intentions are and they're stating them, guess what won't be confusing? Now we can clearly see when people are uncomfortable sharing the intentions behind it because we know there's something else there. Mean what you pray, recognize the importance of the power of prayer, how we benefit when we are in prayer together, when we are combining our prayers together. And so think about what that means for you in your life. Make sure you're focused in this year-end push on closing out the things, tying up the loose ends, closing out this year strong, and then also sitting with God for your guidance for next year. I wish you many peace and blessings and have an enjoyable month of September. Don't forget to check out the book at www.healingisrequired.com. We pre-sell starting on Monday. And if you'd like to know more about the work that I do, you can visit my website at anikaapple.com. I wish you peace and blessings, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of the Anika Apple Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.